Okie dokie. So welcome everybody to a collaborative webinar between VEMC and Impact Washington. We'll go into a little bit more about what we do in a moment. We'll be taking a look at people, process, and technology, how the three of them work together within your business, and how you can improve them in tandem to make more comprehensive decisions and push your business in the right direction.
So when you talk about collaboration, what are we talking about? Well, there are 51 manufacturing and extension partnerships across America and Puerto Rico. Vermont is one of them, as well as Washington. And we are a member of that great network where we go out and help manufacturers improve their processes. We could actually help anybody improve their processes, but we're focused on manufacturing, and that's where we're coming from. So when we talk about people, process, and technology, what a way to introduce some methodologies to gain synergy within those three groups, which is super important.
So we have three objectives today. We're going to broaden our problem-solving space. So when we have an issue or a challenge or an obstacle in our work, it can be easy to focus on a single pain point or a single idea. We want to broaden our headspace. We want to tackle those issues from all sides. We want to break down business silos. So if you're tackling an issue and someone in finance is tackling it from a completely different angle, and people in sales aren't even aware it's an issue, well, that's not a very robust way to run your business. So we want to talk about methods in which you can kind of bring in all sorts of different people from around your organization to help work on all sorts of obstacles. And we want to recognize and actively combat single track thinking. So I mentioned it's easy to focus in on one thing. So, you think you have an issue with the stairs, they're creaky, you fix the stairs, but you don't look at the foundation of the building or, the soil underneath or the bedrock or whatever else. That's what we're trying to do here. We're trying to get away from those tracks.
Who are we? So my name is Louis Prue. I am one of the professional manufacturing and business growth advisors here in Vermont. I'm about 6 months with this particular team, but I have 28 years of manufacturing experience, mostly in operations management. But I have been introduced to Lean about 17 or 18 years ago. I am totally, I think it's the best methodology for improving processes and making your business grow and improve and be more profitable. So that is why I am a member of VEMC and glad to do this presentation for you all.
My name is Damon. I previously worked for the Vermont Manufacturing Extension Center, VEMC, and now I work for Impact Washington, the Washington State one. I'm the IT manager here. I have about 5 years of experience, whether it be as a consultant, analyst, or IT professional within the MEP space. And I come from a background of cybersecurity, technology integrations, and business systems.
So some of the core terminology of the day, we're going to try to get a firm handle on these particular three areas and make them more robust for any business. People right now, hiring techniques. I think we all are aware of a bit of a shortage in human resource. We talk a little bit about personal management, some of the strategic planning associated with that. We'll be talking about process training programs, lean operations, talk a little bit about cross-functionality beyond the production line, let's say. And we will definitely focus on technology, whether it's an ERP system, an MRP system, whether it's your communication platform, be it MS Teams like we have here today, or Zoom or other platforms that you're using and how those communications flow. And we really want to make it understand how we can be more flexible in our worker experience, especially these days. People, like I said, there is a workforce shortage at the moment. We're going to talk a little bit about hiring nationwide, and perhaps global is having this particular issue. Some of the traditional hiring practices and techniques aren't really cutting it or aren't cutting it enough. We really need to attract employees. And we'll talk a little bit about how we're going to do that beyond the normal hiring, send me your resume through Indeed type methodology. Like I said, there is a worker shortage. We don't have a pile of resumes and applications to select from. It's a little more competitive for the employer at this particular moment in time. And our businesses are often struggling because of this. Oh, my friend, you're on mute.
My sincerest apologies. So let's talk a little bit about attracting workforce, and let's start angling in some of that technology and process work, as well as the more traditional people work that you would think of when hiring. So we're not in a vacuum, it's not just Impact Washington hiring or VEMC hiring or whatever your business is. You're in a larger ecosystem. Prospective employees can check you out and will check you out through a variety of means, whether you advertise them or not. So they're going to be looking at social media. They're going to be looking at YouTube. They're definitely going to be looking at Glassdoor. And then there's, a plethora of other sources. They're going to be looking at LinkedIn. They're going to be looking just on plain old Google searches. So historically, if you're an employee, you might be like, oh, this is one of the big businesses in town. We know it's a big business and therefore it must be a good place to work. Or just going off of local reputation. That no longer holds up. And again, as Lewis mentioned, we're in an environment where the employees are the ones who are in demand, not the businesses. So we have to reformat the way we think. We have to reformat the way we build our businesses to appeal to employees in that way. So as we're building our businesses over time, as we're developing them, as we're making hires, making cultural shifts, are we making smart decisions that appeal to the platforms I've just mentioned and many others? Because it's not something that happens overnight. It doesn't happen for free, not in the financial sense, but in the time and the commitment sense. So as you're leading your business, directing your business, you need to be thinking years ahead. We might have a workforce shortage now, but that's not going to change if we're not positioning our business in a really positive manner that people say, oh, I would love to work for them. I Googled them or I checked out their Glassdoor and every review is glowing. That pays dividends for years and years to come. And now I want to also share that the way this information is disseminated is complicated. We're not going to be able to tell you in any definitive way on this call. But sometimes you'll have disgruntled employees. Sometimes you'll have super happy ones. And learning to manage all that in a healthy way is part of the struggle. It's part of the work we have to do.
Yeah, and also just to layer on that, sometimes you want to look at your own websites that your website is oftentimes the first thing that people see. And what does it have on there? Just your products and what your mission is. If you go to somewhere like Ben and Jerry's, and we all know Ben and Jerry's, it's a Vermont firm that really has a social mission. Their values and behaviors are very apparent. If Ben and Jerry's hires you, more than likely, you know exactly what you're getting into for a culture, what their values are, so on and so forth. So that's really important. That's why people are going to social media, even going to YouTube and watching videos about your company, because they want to understand what it's like behind the door as you walk in. They're super knowledgeable in that regard. We also wanted to talk a little bit about possible mentor style programming where you develop leaders. You have very experienced people in the workplace and you have newer employees that are coming in without the experience, but are software savvy. This just actually makes me think of a story. I run a hockey group during the winter, and about 2 years ago, we're an older group of skaters. About 2 years ago, I said, you know what, we're going to all pay via Venmo. We're not going to pay via check anymore. Put your checkbooks away. We don't need them. We're modernizing. It's much easier for everyone. It's a new process. And one of the guys said, I don't have Venmo. I can't use Venmo. And I'm like, well, you have a 16-year-old daughter, don't you? And I hope this isn't age discrimination. I said, well, why don't you ask her how to set up Venmo on your phone? Because it's going to be much easier. Following week, he had it all set up, ready to go. And that's just, pairing people of different experiences together. And we like to talk about developing problem solving maturity with that new thinking. We want to tap everybody's brains within the workforce, whether it's in production or in the office environment. Everybody needs to weigh in. That's the way you reduce the risk of bad decisions, by having more people as part of that decision-making group. If you do value stream mapping or continuous improvement type activities within your facility, get the new people involved. Number one, it's going to train them on what the process is, especially if it's outside their normal work environment. And this means production employees as well as office employees. Grab people off the production floor, have them involved in a value stream map activity or a continuous improvement activity within a team, and let them learn as well as offer improvement suggestions that you might not have gotten from your normal continuous improvement team employees. Train new people on processes like internal auditing. A lot of people like, I don't want to do auditing, but I ran a group of internal auditors. Every new internal auditor goes out to a different department and audits that department, or actually learns, I'd like to say it learns about that department. That's a great way to get your employees up to speed about other business activities beyond their normal work. It also helps them understand how they might be able to add value in the future. So I think that's pretty key. So talked a little bit about flexibility, and working remotely is a great great thing that's come about from the flexibility of the work experience. Working remotely is not out of the norm these days. Everybody works remotely if they can. Obviously, production workers can't. But that necessity was like the mother of invention. We didn't even know we could do this and we have modern technology. We've had it for a number of years. We could have started working remotely before COVID hit, but we didn't, because there was ingrained, people need to come to work. They need to collaborate at work. They need to physically be in the presence of others. But the truth of the matter is that particular process improvement that came about based on necessity made us a lot more flexible. Schools closed. Tom has to go home and watch his children, but he can still work from home because he has this type of platform to continue his work during the day. The situation has become more flexible, and we have higher expectations, whether we prefer it or not. And we develop these new processes wherein that missing employees don't have things come to a stop, come to a grind. One of the things we want to talk about is we have a lot of flexibility in the production arena, right? We try to train people up to know how to run machine 1, machine 2, machine 3, machine 4. And as they learn to understand how to run each different machine, they become more valuable, they get paid more, and it also makes a flexible workforce within manufacturing. We have to copy and paste that into the office environment, where we can't wait for Susan, who's on vacation for a week, who's the expert in this particular area, to come back. That week is a lost amount of time in a work environment that has to be nimble and has to work with velocity. We'll talk a little bit more about that in a few more slides. So one of the things I like to talk about, because I have a somewhat of a background in app softwares and applications, especially the ones that interface with a cross-functional workforce, whether it's ERP or whether it's MS Teams or beyond that. Advancements in applications can be your business advantage, right? So if you're going to choose a software application, it's usually done by maybe the IT department with some collaboration with the team that's actually going to be using that particular application, whether it's Salesforce or ERP or whatever. You want to get more people involved in picking these software applications, and you certainly don't want to have rogue applications within your business that people within that particular department, let's say engineering, says they started using an application that nobody else is aware of. It might add value to them, but if we don't know what it is and what it does, it may be a deterrent from doing the flow that we need within the business. So what I'm promoting and what we're promoting is that when you choose an application that crosses many boundaries, get more cross-functional people together to choose that application. You're going to be more successful in the long run, People are going to know what it does. They're going to know the outputs and the inputs, and they're going to know something that like they're just going to understand the application better, for lack of a better term. And you want to train all those users to reduce the risk. The new ISO standard, ISO 9001, 2015, is a pretty normal production standard, says, we want to make sure that you're making decisions with as many people as possible within a team so that you reduce the risk of a bad decision. And when you choose a software application, it's the same thing. And we don't want applications that are out there that the rest of the company is not aware of. So choose an application, put it in, whether it's MS Teams for communication platform or Zoom or ERP, and make sure we have more people weighing in on that decision. It's super important to get the long-term effects of that software application.
Now we can talk about my favorite thing. Well, not my favorite thing, my chosen profession, technology. So there are about a million different angles we could hit the idea of technology at. It's been core to business for most of our lifetimes, going back to the 50s and 60s, and it's just grown more and more and more so since then. So I chose ERP, MRP up at the top here and for our anecdote. However, put a pin in that, because everything I'm about to say could be applied to virtually any thing with a current running through it in front of you. So I'm sure at least some of you have heard this before, but our ERP or MRP is wasteful, or it's not working right, because everyone's been there. I very seldom walk into a business and hear them say, we love our ERP. It does everything. It's lightweight. It's easy to set up. That doesn't tend to be how they run. So we hear things like, company communications aren't flowing well. It's bugging out. It doesn't work with our phones. Entry-level employees are not on board, not onboarded, or don't care. And it doesn't have any of the reports we need. Those are some examples. And again, you can take those same examples and apply it to anything. Apply it to technologies that help you communicate, like Teams or Zoom, or there are a million others, Slack, texting, email, whatever you use to communicate. You probably use several of them. You can apply it to the latest Industry 4.0 term that someone's trying to sell you, whether that be adding in VR or AR or robots or QR codes. Not that those technologies are wrong or bad, but they have a hurdle to implement. It's not as easy as just plug this technology into your business and everything is better, because we have those other aspects to keep in mind, those people and those process. So let's hop back to our initial example, ERP, MRP, but please keep in mind that this very same verbiage can be used for virtually any technology. So I have a made-up quote here that I have heard verbatim probably at least 50 or 60 times. We've known, and now we have all these ERPs, MRPs, SAP, NetSuite, Katana, Fishbowl, whatever you use. It's not working for us. We're moving to new ERP, MRP. I've been there. I've been there several times. I've been in other businesses that are there. And you know what? Very often it's true. A move may be needed between softwares. They advance so fast. There's acquisitions, there's developments. It's just a fast-moving industry. And some of our technologies, our microcontrollers, we don't want those moving. Other things, like the ways we chat and communicate with employees, they're going to move every couple of years, maybe every 5 years, maybe every 10, but it's not a static thing forever. So a move might be needed. That's totally fine. Technology changes sometimes, but let's pause there. We might need to move, but do we have all the information we need? And when I say all the information, I mean all the information from the people working at your organization, from the processes that you set up, from the data you might be collecting. And when I say data, I don't always mean, like sensors giving you readouts and all that. We don't all have that set up. I mean data like collecting it from your employees. How long is it taking you to do this? Maybe gathering it by hand. Maybe checking on logs that are sent to you. Maybe chatting with your vendors to see how their other clients are doing. So data can come from any number of places. Doesn't necessarily have to be like a a data analyst company or hire or anything like that. But it can look like that. So I want to introduce an idea of go and see. Very simple phrasing, and it means just about what it says. So don't take any department's word for it, not because we don't trust our departments, our accountants, our salespeople, whatever else, but because differing perspectives are critical. Again, we're trying to break down silos here. So if you're a leader or you're a decision maker, you should be going and handling accounting systems. And obviously, I don't mean, posting transactions and doing this and doing that, but I mean, go sit down with your entry-level accountants, sit down with your accounting managers, sit down with not just accounting, but maybe the people making it, developing your system, whether it be consultants or a technology company or an internal IT person, and have these conversations. Say, how does this work? Where are your pain points? Because me, as a systems person, I have those conversations all the time, but I also have biases. You, as a decision maker or business leader, can sit down and have those same conversations and learn something completely different. And that's where the term go and see comes from. We don't want to have one person making all the decisions or gathering all the data or even collecting all the variables. We want all sorts of people to go out there and see and have these conversations, not just for accounting. Do it for your folks on the production line, do it for your new hires, do it for your old hires. You don't have to immerse yourself for weeks and weeks and months. Just go spend a day or two, chatting about the nitty-gritty. You don't need to become a professional on each of these processes. You do want to learn and try to get some perspective and the things that stick out. Now, why are we doing this? It's because everyone thinks differently. Everyone has different goals. So, an accountant, they're trying to keep maybe their invoices, average days down. Your salespeople are trying to push sales. Your production workers are trying to hit their quotas. If everyone has different goals, they're all going to be sort of noticing different pain points. And you as a business leader may be seeing a bigger picture and missing the smaller ones. It all varies. The point is that we get everyone's perspectives in different ways. So what I want to do here is start to bring this all together. And we're going to use the easy example, I must admit. So workforce is the thing that everyone's struggling with right now, or a vast majority of businesses at least. I would like to shout out two businesses like Ben & Jerry's because they have such a strong culture. They don't really struggle with workforce. And I must place a disclaimer. We don't work directly with them. We're using them as an example because it's a very recognizable brand name internationally, even not just in the US. So that's why we're using that example. But they're not having a workforce shortage because they have such a strong culture and setup, and they've been doing so for decades that, the pressure came and they were fine. So that's just one anecdote, though. Many people are struggling. So what are we going to make efforts to do? Everyone's struggling with workforce to some extent, even if they're overcoming it with their own talent. But we want to make sure that we're not trying to tackle this issue with one solution. That never works for anybody. You can't show up and say, I have this new software, this new website. We're going to sign up with the Indeed package and our workforce woes will be over. Or we have this perfect hiring manager, workforce is solved. Or, we have this new process of onboarding, it's hyper fast, no more problems. There is no such solution. However, incorporating technologies and people and processes is what we're here to do. And that is a solution, albeit it's not as easy. It's not as, ribbon tied or bow tied a solution. So I've rambled a little bit here. Let's start talking about it. We have a workforce issue. Let's start asking ourselves questions from all angles. Is our business optimized for flexible in-home or in-office work? And maybe there's production staff, so they can't be at home. That's fine. Are flexible hours something that we can do? Are our shifts covered in such a way where emergency shifts aren't unduly stressing people out? Maybe we could have non-standard yet standard schedules wherein maybe it's, 2 4-hour shifts in a day with a big break in the middle, as opposed to a single continuous 8 or 10-hour shift or 12-hour shift or whatever you're doing. These are possibilities. They're all different angles to attack the problem from. They're all, in this case, process-based to help our people or our prospective people. So we can talk about hours all day and different schedules that work and different anecdotes. But what about once they go home for the day or once their career is growing? If I'm someone and I'm looking at a business and I'm saying, hey, I need a job right now, that's true, but I also want to have a career. I want to grow somewhere. Or maybe I don't want to grow somewhere. Maybe I just need the paycheck for a couple years or a couple months and then I'm good to go. We want to make sure our business is built to support these people no matter what they're trying to do, so long as they fit in to, what we're trying to do. For instance, if I'm trying to appeal to, say, college students, they can come in for shorter shifts, they can ease up on holiday hours and that sort of thing because they'll be out anyway. Well, that's great. Now, are we trying to retain them once they're no longer students? Well, we should give them a path for career growth. And that's not something that we can just flick a switch and turn on. Those are processes that have to be built out months and years ahead of time. Their programs, their marketing materials, their ideas, they have to be demoed. So let's start thinking about that in our businesses. Maybe we have these hours that are nice and flexible or have different options. Now let's say, okay, we have someone who's working here, maybe part-time, maybe as a temporary gig in their life. How do we transition that to a career? Now, that could be a perfect follow-in to technology. Maybe we have some robotics on site and offer them a career path to become an expert in those robotics. Maybe we have, management positions that they can work their way up to. All sorts of different options. And they're going to utilize our 3 core tenets of people, process, and technology. And finally, let's go back to our software. Are we utilizing modern recruiting techniques to reach out and appeal to a wide yet capable audience? As we mentioned earlier, we're in an atmosphere right now where workers are in demand. Businesses are not in demand. So we have to make ourselves appealing. And that's the necessity of it. That means we go on these websites, we have to put up a good picture, we have to put up a good culture, and we have to back it up too, because it's not all in our hands to send that message. And further, do we have experts on site that can handle these technologies and these softwares and these marketing techniques? It's relatively new. That does not mean that you age out of it. It just means that you have to keep learning and keep training and keep advancing yourselves as I don't want to say transition. We're not transitioning. It's just a different aspect of business these days. So that was a little bit wordy. I do apologize. But what I'm trying to drive home here is that workforce cannot be solved with a single golden ticket. It can be solved by incorporating, the know-how, the people themselves, and the technologies at hand in your businesses.
Before I start this slide, I love the term go and see and understand what's going on. I think that's beneficial. I was actually in a team this morning where I was actually circling around somebody at a computer and everybody was watching them do what they do. And there's oftentimes the points where you're like, oh my God, I didn't know you could do that, or I didn't know that. By going and seeing and understanding what other parts of the workforce do, it is very educational and very informative, and it helps gain that synergy within a business. I also want to touch on based on ERP. I've been involved in many different manufacturing companies, not many, several, and I can't tell you one of them that's happy with their ERP system, and they change them out every 5 years, which costs an enormous amount of money to change it out. And then you have this huge learning curve for the new system, which is supposed to be better than the old system. It's just unbelievable amount of waste that's put in if you don't do that due diligence and cross-functional understanding of that package before you purchase it. Because any salesperson is going to sell you an ERP system. They're brilliant at that. Anyway, back to my slide. So bringing it all together as far as the knowledge base is concerned. In production, there's often certification charts for people to learn jobs. I think it's a very good job for the office environment to have certifications for software application. Who knows what within the software realm, because they're all very complicated, but we can get up to speed on the functionality of all of them. We often have like in an ERP system, we have a major person or like this expert within the company. We need to have less experts and more of a knowledge base of everybody within the company, whether it's part of your workspace or not. and you're not in sales, you should know what Salesforce does within the sales department. You should know what ERP does, even if you're not part of the manufacturing team. That pockets of expertise need to be broken up, and they should be cross-pollinated with other parts of the company. It's going to gain you more velocity and understanding and be much more effective. All who use these applications should be super users to some extent. I know that's a time investment, but you do that investment up front and you're going to get a lot of returns afterwards. So what does that look like? Okay. So, oops, can you flip the slide for me? So within production, you have certain people that know how to do certain machines. So it might be really good. We are really big on visual systems within the MEP environment and lean environment. We're trying to say, this is what everybody that knows these particular things, this is what they know how to do. So you might have your software, your major software applications that you've chosen with a cross-functional team, hopefully, and you want to know who has the expertise and how you might gain some more expertise with these particular software applications. You would see these little circles as areas for who knows what. So a little quarter of the circle would mean that that person is in training. They know somewhat, a little bit about Trello or SAP, but they don't know that much about it, truthfully. But they're in training, and maybe if they got a half circle, they're trained, they know pretty much about that software application, but they still don't know, they're not the expert, and they certainly could gain more knowledge about it. If 3/4 of the circle is filled, that means they're trained, they know how to use this application, even if it's not in their department, they know how to use it. And they know that the products that are coming out of it that may feed into their department, they know where they've come from and how they were generated. And then you have these pockets of experts where if the full circle is filled up, that means that they are the experts in SAP. They are the experts in ERP. They are the expert with Slang or whatever software package that you have. Wouldn't it be great to, if you're really struggling with a question on MS Teams that, Joanne Smith is the expert in MS Teams. Because let's face it, when you start an MS Teams meeting and it doesn't go as planned, it's super frustrating. And may not even happen because of that. We need these pockets of expertise. We need to grow within the business and understand all these software applications. It makes us much more flexible and it makes us more dependable throughout the workforce. So what does this mean? So Damon and I started this. We're like, we need to talk about people and process and technology, how we get that synergy, how we make them all come together. And we didn't even really know how we were going to get there. And this wasn't like, at the end, I'm like, wow, these are all the things that we do every day. We try to bring everybody together with solutions, and we're all process-based in these manufacturing extension partnerships. Doesn't just mean that manufacturers can benefit from this. Any business can benefit from it. But as I looked at this, we do have a go and see type of culture within the lean environment. We're all about standardization. Value stream mapping is part of the component that we go out and we actually map a process to understand the software, who knows about the software, what are the steps involved in this particular process, and the applications that are being employed, whether it's Excel or whether it's Salesforce, whatever it is. Value stream mapping is an extremely great tool to illuminate what you have and share it with everybody on that cross-functional team. We're trying to gain velocity within a business, and I really didn't know that the conclusion would come down to the fact that this is the things that we do every day. Wasn't trying to be a sales pitch, truthfully, but these are the things that you gain when you have a lean environment within your business. Value stream mapping current processes, understanding how they work, creating standard working tools, eliminating waste within a business. And there's a lot of waste that you cannot even see, but you need to understand what the wastes look like in order to improve them. And that's part of what we do in the manufacturing extension partnerships. We want to maximize people, their brain power. We want to make the processes the best and that they can possibly be. Of course, they're never going to be perfect, but they can always be improved, and make sure that the technology is linked in and you working with the people and the processes in order to maximize, inevitably, profits, truthfully. So that's what we're trying to bring together. We're ready to answer some questions. We're really pumped about doing this presentation and how it fits in with a lean manufacturing environment, or a lean any environment, truthfully. I think we're going to open up the questions, aren't we, Damon?
We are indeed. Thank you for that. So if you click on the chat box, you can ask any questions you may have. We will hang out and answer them as they pop up. If they pop up, you know, you're not obliged to. But thank you for hopping on this webinar here. We've just noticed patterns over the years, and we said, hey, we should share these with someone. They seem like pretty digestible snippets that could definitely help someone out as they're starting to tackle their own business issues.
Yeah, even if you got one little nugget of gold in there, that's going to be beneficial. It's all about continuous improvement, making things better, small steps or large steps. Usually small repeated improvement steps are a way to improve business processes. We want to answer some questions. We absolutely do.
Lewis, I think we may have entered the wrong phone number for you there.
Oh, yeah, I'm not at 802. So let me tell you what it is verbally. 802-363-7229. 363-7229. I got my phone with me right now if you want to call.
7229, you said?
802-363-7229.
Yeah. Now, I don't know if 000 numbers exist, like if they're accessible, but that would be a very cool phone number to have. Also, no one would believe you, so it wouldn't be a very functional phone number.
Yeah.
But I'm going to look into that once this call's over, because I think that would be neat. So I see Darcy has asked, what types of training would you recommend as an offshoot of this webinar? And now, since we're on opposite sides of the country, we may have slightly different answers, Lewis and I. But what I would start by doing, Darcy, so I'm going to let Lewis answer as well, but what I would start by doing is before you look for a training directly, just take maybe like a half hour and start to jot down some pain points you have in your organization. Maybe you already know them, maybe they're already jotted down, but that's going to help inform not just the training you take, but the questions you start to ask and what you take away from that training. So that's a little bit of homework. Once you do that, I would definitely reach out to either VEMC or Impact, depending on which side of the country you're on, as we have many experts like Lewis who could help line you up at a proper training. Lewis, do you have anything you wanted to add?
Yeah, I mean, I like to go and see. So I would never propose any training to anybody unless, I mean, I could easily. There's things that you could definitely do right off the beginning. But I really benefit from doing, if you could invest an hour in walking me around your facility, or somebody at the Washington, if you're in Washington, there's a big benefit to having people coming and seeing what you're doing, have a dialogue, understand. Maybe you have some few problems that you want to work on. Maybe you want to do some structured problem solving classes. Lean 101 is a definite. I mean, if you haven't had Lean 101 and understand the concepts and speak the same language, I think it's something that you should definitely invest in. That gets the population and the culture engaged. And one of the things we want to do is engage everybody within the company, because everybody has different ways of thinking. My wife's a professor and I work in manufacturing. She thinks I'm smarter than she is. I think she's smarter than I am. We think differently. So harness that energy of every person within the facility, whether it's in the office or in manufacturing, to get the best solution, cross functionality. I mean, there's a lot of other programs, but value stream mapping, was doing that this morning. It is so illuminating to see the problems exist on paper as you're mapping through a process, and then improve them.
So Copeland Furniture asks, you mentioned modern recruiting software. Are there any you recommend specifically? I messed up my words a little bit at the end there, but yes. So if you do like a quick Google search, you'll find the big ones, things like LinkedIn and Indeed, and those are all great. I don't know if I'd call them modern anymore. They're 20 or 30 years in, but those are one angle. The other angle is going for professional hiring. I guess you could call them headhunters. They have more professional titles, but that is what they are. And I usually don't recommend them as readily, as I find that they go for the shotgun approach where they're just trying to get you massive amounts of applications, whether applicable or not. So what I usually like to recommend is lean on those more traditional mediums, whether it be your LinkedIn's, your Glassdoors, your Indeeds, where you can get your business out there and put together a really professional campaign. Work with marketing people, work with the hiring managers, to get your organization in a really attractive spot for potential applicants. And that's not to say that there aren't good independent hiring managers, consultants. It's just that they're very hard to find. So if you're going to go that route, I would be careful and vet them thoroughly. If you do have a great one, though, they're going to be able to push you in a great direction as well.
I would also say go the least expensive way, get a YouTube video out there for this is what Copeland does. This is why we do it. This is why the people that work here are pumped about it. And I bet you'll have some hits. People are very savvy. They have the phone, they have their computer in their hand, and they know how to use it. And they're going to find out what happens there. And or obviously there's other methodologies, but whether it's, I don't know, the newer applications, I still have to learn about Instagram and all that stuff, but get in there.
Yeah, that's an excellent point. You can use marketing as an extension to your hiring. So for instance, I assume you do furniture based on your name. If you have an Instagram where you're posting your nice pieces of furniture, you could say, hey, this might be an excellent opportunity for you to join our team. Look at all this cool stuff you could be working on. And if you have a built-in audience of people who are already interested in furniture and probably local, then that can be an excellent avenue as well outside of, where people are actively searching for work. You can catch them when they're just hanging out, if that makes sense. And I do like the YouTube video idea. You can also share that. So if you're at, trade shows or local fairs or wherever, if you have a neat video that you can link people to or post on your other social medias, then that can be a very sort of professional and reproducible way of doing it.
And also think about upgrading your webpage to say what your values and behaviors and what your culture is like. People want to know that.
That's an excellent point.
Good questions. Can there be more? Yes.
Thank you. Yeah, so if that's all we have for questions, thank you so much again for attending. You can find us at most of the contact info here or reach Lewis at 802-363-7229. I will be hanging out here for a couple more minutes, but please enjoy the rest of your week. Hopefully you have an excellent fall ahead of you, or autumn. Autumn's a nicer word if we're being real here.
Yeah, especially in Vermont.